Among all the nuts consumed by humans, the cashew is by far the most deceptive and the one that looks most like an alien life form. If you walk into any modern supermarket, you will see walnuts, pistachios, almonds, hazelnuts, and even rock-hard macadamia nuts, all neatly displayed in their natural shells. Only the cashew is different. From the moment it arrives in your hands, it is always perfectly shelled and roasted to a golden hue. You will never in your entire life find an in-shell raw cashew sitting on a grocery shelf. This is not about aesthetic appeal, nor is it merely for consumer convenience. It is an absolute safety mandate written in human blood and tears. Because in nature, if you ever dare to bite directly into a fresh, raw cashew in its shell, medically speaking, it is virtually identical to pouring concentrated chemical poison straight down your throat. Why is the cashew so dangerous? To understand, we have to look at its bizarre botanical anatomy. The cashew tree is native to the edges of the Amazon rainforest in South America. Botanically, it belongs to the Anacardiaceae family. That is right. It shares the exact same dangerous lineage as notorious poison ivy, poison sumac, and the toxic lacquer trees used in ancient East Asia. Even stranger is its reproductive strategy. When you look at a mature cashew hanging from a branch, you're actually staring into an evolutionary trap. The large, juicy, bell pepper-like structure at the top, glowing bright red or vibrant yellow, is not the true fruit at all. It is an enlarged pseudo-fruit formed from the swollen flower stalk, known locally as the cashew apple. It bites like a juicy sponge, packs 5 times more vitamin C than an orange, and radiates an intense tropical fragrance. Locals even crush and ferment it into potent tropical spirits. Yet the true fruit, the one responsible for carrying on the lineage and protecting the precious seed, hangs entirely isolated at the very bottom of this pseudo-fruit. It is that grayish-green, kidney-shaped, rock-hard curved pod. This setup is extraordinarily rare in nature. Usually, plants hide their seeds deep within sweet, protective flesh to encourage animal dispersal. Why would the cashew tree go to the trouble of manufacturing a giant lump of sugary pulp on top, only to leave its actual reproductive organ completely externalized, exposed for all the animal kingdom to see? The evolutionary logic is ruthlessly practical. The sweet pseudo-fruit on top is a bribe, while the armored pod on the bottom is a biochemical execution chamber for thieves. The tree wants birds and monkeys to pluck the sweet cashew apple and discard the bottom seed. But it under no circumstances tolerates any animal crushing that seed. To defend its core genetic payload, the tree packed this unassuming woody shell with an entire arsenal of lethal biochemical weapons. If we slice open the rock-hard shell of a raw cashew, you will discover this is no ordinary nut skin. It is a 3-layered armored fortress. The outermost layer is as tough as leather. The innermost layer tightly protects the kernel, and sandwiched between these 2 hard shells lies a dense, honeycomb-like spongy matrix. This honeycomb chamber is saturated with a dark brown, foul-smelling, viscous, oily liquid known industrially as cashew nut shell liquid or CNSL. This liquid is far from harmless oil. It is a natural toxin even more insidious than inorganic acid. Its primary active weapon is a high concentration of urushiol. While strong inorganic acids cause damage through crude dehydration and chemical burns, urushiol acts like a stealthy molecular Trojan horse. One end of its molecule dissolves effortlessly in oils, while the other features a highly reactive chemical ring. The moment raw cashew resin touches bare skin, it ghosts through your skin's protective lipid barrier in seconds, penetrating deep into the dermis. Once inside, it chemically fuses itself onto the structural proteins of your own skin cells. This triggers a catastrophic reaction from your immune system. White blood cells and T cells are completely deceived into believing your skin cells have mutated into lethal foreign pathogens, unleashing a furious autoimmune assault. Within 10 to 48 hours of contact, the affected area erupts into severe edema, extensive erythema, and dense clusters of weeping blisters accompanied by an excruciating burning agony akin to scalding hot oil poured over bare flesh. If someone mistakenly chews on an in-shell raw cashew, the toxic resin instantly destroys the oral and esophageal mucosa, triggering acute laryngeal edema. Within just 30 minutes, this can lead to total airway obstruction, suffocation, and systemic shock. Throughout history, this botanical venom has caused terrifying incidents. During the early age of exploration, when a European expedition first landed on the West African coast, starving sailors found cashew pods scattered across the jungle floor. Mistaking them for wild peanuts, they eagerly stuffed them into their mouths. Within hours, the vast majority of the crew suffered massive oral ulcerations and suffocating throat swelling, writhing in agony on the deck. In terror, the sailors christened it the devil's cursed fruit. By the mid-20th century, workers at primitive cashew processing sheds would often take shortcuts and burn colossal mounds of raw cashew shells in open-air fire pits. Acrid smoke laced with vaporized Urushiol was carried by coastal winds straight into neighboring villages, causing hundreds of residents to suffer from acute chemical pneumonitis, massive respiratory inflammation, and even temporary blindness. Even today, individuals with severe poison ivy sensitivities who accidentally ingest a defective nut carrying microscopic traces of raw shell oil, even a few micrograms, can suffer immediate, life-threatening anaphylactic shock. How did such a lethal plant from the South American rainforest conquer the globe and evolve into a multi-billion-dollar global snack empire? It all began in the 16th century, with the Great Transatlantic Ecological Exchange. Around 1560, Portuguese explorers encountered this fiercely resilient tree in the jungles of northeastern Brazil. The cashew tree boasts an immense root system. Its taproot can drill vertically more than 10 meters deep into the subsoil, while its lateral roots weave a massive subterranean web that locks down the topsoil. Even in arid sands that see no rain for 6 months, or in high salinity coastal dunes, it flourishes wildly. In the state of Rio Grande do Norte, Brazil, stands a living botanical miracle, the famous Pirangi giant cashew tree. In the late 19th century, this single tree underwent a rare genetic mutation. Instead of dying off, its lateral branches grow outwards, become heavy, bend to touch the ground, and sprout brand new root systems and secondary trunks, much like a banyan tree. Over the past century, this single individual tree has expanded into an entire forest spanning 8,500 square meters, the equivalent of 70 ordinary cashew trees combined, producing tens of thousands of fruits every single year to stabilize coastal sands and prevent soil erosion in their tropical colonies. The Portuguese loaded cashew seeds onto sailing caravels and shipped them across the ocean to Goa on the western coast of India, eventually spreading them across Mozambique and Côte d'Ivoire in West Africa, as well as Vietnam and Cambodia in Southeast Asia. Initially, the Portuguese utilized the plant purely for coastal erosion control, but local populations soon discovered a revelation. When roasted over intense fire, the outer toxic oil completely broke down, revealing an immaculate, snow-white roasted kernel inside, rich, buttery, and possessing a decadent crunch that surpassed any native European nut of the era. In Goa, India, locals went a step further, pioneering a unique cashew liquor culture. Freshly harvested cashew apples were dumped into large stone basins and crushed by foot. The sweet, multi-fruited juice was collected in earthenware jars for wild fermentation, then distilled 3 times through traditional copper alembic pot stills to create Goa Feni, a potent spirit exceeding 40% ABV. Packed with tropical fruit aromas and wild mineral notes, this artisanal liquor remains a proud cultural hallmark of the region to this day. Yet behind its booming global popularity, the cashew industry remained shadowed by brutal human toil for generations. Before modern automation, enjoying an intact cashew kernel required human workers to endure the caustic venom with their bare bodies. During the mid to late 20th century, hundreds of thousands of workers in South Asian processing sheds sat on dirt floors from dawn till dusk. Because every single cashew pod possesses a unique curvature and shape, no conventional machinery could crack the shell without pulverizing the fragile kernel inside. Workers had no choice but to grip raw pods with one hand and strike the outer seam with a wooden mallet, relying entirely on muscle memory. For protection, workers coated their hands with thick layers of wood ash or clay, but against highly penetrating lipophilic resins, the ash barrier was quickly breached by sweat and corrosive oils. Workers' hands were chronically blackened, peeling, and marked by painful chemical scars. Even harsher were the commercial economics. On the international market, a whole, unbroken cashew kernel fetched several times the price of broken pieces. Even when the pain in their fingers was unbearable, workers had to meticulously calibrate every strike, ensuring they never fractured the kernel within. Today, this trade has given rise to an extraordinary global logistical artery. West African nations enjoy the ideal tropical climate, cultivating nearly half of the world's raw cashew supply. But lacking large-scale electrical grids and advanced processing facilities, millions of tons of raw, toxic in-shell nuts must be loaded into giant container ships, hauled over 10,000 kilometers across the Indian Ocean to state-of-the-art factories in Vietnam and India for automated detoxification and cracking. Once processed, the clean kernels are reloaded onto cargo vessels bound for supermarkets across North America, Europe, and East Asia. Before a single cashew reaches your mouth, it has traversed 3 continents and voyaged tens of thousands of nautical miles across the globe. To transform cashews into a safe culinary delicacy, humanity had to master not only transoceanic logistics, but also bow to the plant's peculiar biology right at the harvest stage. In cashew agronomy, there is a counterintuitive iron rule. Never pick a cashew directly from the tree branch. Why, if you forcefully tear an unreleased fruit from the tree? The bottom nut is completely immature, shriveled and devoid of essential oils. Worse still, the caustic resins inside the unripe shell are under high hydrostatic pressure. Aggressive pulling can cause toxic sap to spray out, severely burning the harvester's eyes and skin. True botanical maturity occurs only when the internal abscission layer between the fruit and branch fully separates. The cashew must fall naturally under its own gravitational weight and the gentle tropical breeze. Only when it hits the ground do the internal lipids and aromatic compounds reach their zenith, while the outer shell fully lignifies into a hardened barrier. Consequently, the job of millions of cashew farmers worldwide is not picking, but rather intensive ground harvesting, combing through humid tropical groves at dawn to collect fallen pods. Wearing heavy protective gloves, harvesters firmly grip the junction between the pseudo-fruit and the nut, executing a clockwise twist to snap the juicy apple cleanly away from the hard shell. Once gathered, the raw, in-shell nuts must immediately be transported to vast concrete drying yards for 2 to 3 days of scorching solar dehydration. This is far more than simple drying. It is a battle of precision moisture management. Freshly gathered raw cashews contain up to 16% moisture. If bagged and stacked directly, damp shells will rapidly ferment and generate internal heat in tropical humidity, fostering mold growth or even triggering spontaneous combustion in stockpiles. Only by sun curing the moisture down to a critical threshold of 8 to 9% does the shell turn brittle with micropores, while the internal kernel shrinks and hardens, priming it for long ocean voyages and automated cracking. When tens of thousands of tons of sun-cured, toxic raw cashews arrive at modern processing hubs, an automated war between human engineering and natural biochemicals officially commences. To completely eliminate the toxin while extracting pristine, unbroken kernels, modern megafactories deploy an astonishing 10-stage, fully enclosed industrial pipeline. Stage 1, precision rotary trommel sizing. Upon entering the facility, raw cashews tumble into massive, tilted, rotating stainless steel trommel drums. Drilled with micro-calibrated perforations, these spinning drums sort the pods into 5 distinct size grades at high speed. Achieving strict size uniformity is essential for subsequent CNC blades to perform sub-millimeter incisions. Stage 2, high-pressure thermal steam detoxification. The graded cashews enter industrial pressure autoclaves, tumbling in saturated steam at nearly 200 degrees Celsius for 20 minutes. Under this intense thermal onslaught, the Urushiol resins within the honeycomb shell vaporize and exhaust, drastically diminishing toxicity. Simultaneously, the superheated steam softens the rigid woody shell while causing the internal kernel to dehydrate and shrink slightly. This creates a microscopic air gap between shell and kernel, breaking the physical adhesion and setting the stage for zero-damage extraction. Stage 3. Climate-controlled cooling and embrittlement. Fresh out of the steam autoclave, the shells are soft and pliable. Attempting to cut them now would crush the internal kernel like a squashed plastic bottle. The nuts are transferred into ventilated cooling chambers for 1 to 2 days, allowing the shell's lignin structure to cool and regain its hard, brittle, crystalline state. Stage 4. CNC contour slitting and high-speed centrifugal cracking. This is the core technological marvel of the entire facility. Large nuts enter automated CNC contour slitting machines. Vibratory tracks align the cashews into a single-file procession, where dual tungsten carbide blades, shaped to match the pod's exact curvature, pierce the shell seam in a millisecond. The blades instantly pry outward, popping the brittle shell in two, letting the pristine white kernels slide out completely untouched. Smaller nuts are routed into high-speed centrifugal decorticators, propelled at dozens of meters per second against specialized elastomeric impact plates, shattering the shells via kinetic shock. The entire operation is fully hermetic, ensuring workers never touch a single raw pod. Stage 5. Thermal kiln dehydration. Freshly cracked kernels cannot yet be eaten, as they remain tightly wrapped in a reddish-brown, paper-like skin called the testa. Packed with high levels of astringent tannins, this skin tastes intensely bitter. The kernels travel through massive hot air kilns, baking at a steady 70 degrees Celsius for 6 to 8 hours. As residual moisture is extracted, the bitter brown skin shrivels and detaches loosely from the kernel. Stage 6. Humidity conditioning. Freshly baked kernels are as fragile as potato chips. Attempting to peel them immediately would cause catastrophic breakage. They are moved into temperature and humidity-controlled conditioning rooms for several hours, allowing the kernels to reabsorb trace atmospheric moisture and regain mechanical elasticity, while the outer dry skin remains crisp. Stage 7. Subsonic aerodynamic peeling. Next comes the magic of pneumatic peeling. Kernels enter a vortex chamber where dozens of high-pressure nozzles blast subsonic air knives. The swirling air vortex strips away the brittle brown skins in an instant, leaving the silky smooth kernel surface completely free of mechanical abrasion. Stage 8. AI multispectral eagle eye sorting. Stripped of all camouflage, the naked ivory white kernels race across conveyor belts at several meters per second. Industrial ultra-high-speed CCD cameras and infrared multispectral sensors serve as the digital eagle eyes of the line. Under high-frequency strobe illumination, AI computer vision analyzes every single cashew in a fraction of a millisecond, evaluating its dimensions, coloration, lipid distribution, and even peering deep inside with infrared to detect hidden internal fractures or insect damage. The instant a defect is spotted, high-speed micropneumatic valves at the belt's terminus fire a burst of compressed air in 2 milliseconds, deflecting the defective nut into a reject bin like an air bullet with an accuracy exceeding 99.9%. Stage 9. International precision grading. The flawless kernels that pass inspection are automatically sorted and weighed according to international trade standards. Whole kernels receive the letter W, followed by a number indicating the count per pound. From the massive, crescent-shaped king of cashews, W180, with just 180 nuts per pound, down to the popular commercial benchmark W320, every tier is strictly defined. Stage 10. Vacuum nitrogen flush packaging. Cashews are packed with heart-healthy unsaturated fatty acids, making them highly susceptible to oxidative rancidity upon air exposure. In the final stage, automated packaging lines drop the kernels into multi-layer aluminum barrier pouches, pull a deep vacuum, instantly inject 99.99% high-purity inert nitrogen gas, and hermetically seal the bag. With this, modern engineering has fully conquered nature's toxic defenses, without a single drop of human sweat or manual handling. At this point, observant shoppers might find themselves wondering, if wild raw cashews are genuinely so poisonous, why do we constantly see bags labeled raw cashews in supermarket baking aisles and health food sections? Are those commercially sold raw cashews safe to eat straight out of the bag? This stems from an innocent linguistic misunderstanding in the food industry. In botanical terms, a true raw cashew refers to the freshly fallen, unpeeled fruit encased in its toxic shell. This biological raw cashew is strictly classified as a hazardous substance banned from commercial sale in food markets worldwide. Commercial raw cashews in supermarkets, on the other hand, have already completed the factory's full preliminary processing, high-pressure steam detoxification, CNC mechanical shelling, and aerodynamic skinning. They simply have not undergone secondary oil frying, high-heat roasting, or seasoning with added salt and sugar. Commercial raw cashews exhibit a soft ivory-white hue, a tender and slightly supple texture, and a delicate, milky, natural nutty fragrance. They are 100% safe to eat raw right out of the pouch. Every trace of toxin was thoroughly neutralized during the initial high-temperature steaming stage. In modern plant-based culinary arts, these unroasted raw cashews are even more versatile than roasted ones. Take vegan cream and artisanal plant cheeses, for instance. Cashews possess a remarkably high starch content and natural emulsifying properties rarely found in other nuts. By soaking raw cashews in warm water and blending them at high speeds, their plant lipids and moisture instantly homogenize into an ultra-silky, completely grit-free white cream. In the culinary world, it is the indispensable foundation for raw vegan cheesecakes, dairy-free ice cream, and fermented artisan cheeses. Meanwhile, in high-end Chinese wok cooking, such as classic cashew shrimp or kung pao chicken, master chefs insist on using commercial raw cashews. They gently fry them in warm, low-temperature oil, allowing the nuts to achieve an exquisite golden crispness on the outside while staying tender within. If you were to drop pre-roasted cashews into a sizzling wok, the secondary high heat would quickly scorch them, leaving a bitter, burnt aftertaste. Yet in the centuries-long duel between humanity and the cashew, the most awe-inspiring chapter is not the exquisite flavor of the nut, but the destiny of those hard shells once dismissed as hazardous industrial waste. In early processing facilities, the dense outer shell accounted for nearly 70% of the fruit's total weight. Millions of tons of toxic shells generated worldwide each year posed an environmental nightmare. Buried in soil, the caustic Urushiol would leach into aquifers, poisoning crops and groundwater. Incinerated, the noxious fumes would blow downwind, sickening entire communities. Yet through the lens of modern polymer chemistry, this dark brown sludge, cashew nutshell liquid, is a magnificent chemical goldmine engineered by nature itself. Chemists discovered that the core molecule extracted from shell liquid, known as cardinal, possesses an extraordinary chemical architecture. Its head is a rigid, hyper-temperature-resistant aromatic benzene ring, imparting extreme mechanical hardness and flame retardancy. Its tail is a flexible, unsaturated 15-carbon hydrocarbon chain, endowing the material with natural hydrophobicity, impact toughness, and tear resistance. This unique balance of structural rigidity and flexibility has propelled cashew shell derivatives into a spectacular renaissance across heavy industry and advanced aerospace. First, high-performance aircraft brakes. When a 300-ton Boeing 777 or Airbus A350 touches down at hundreds of kilometers per hour, the landing gear brake discs must absorb colossal kinetic energy in seconds, with friction temperatures skyrocketing past 800 to 1000 degrees Celsius, glowing bright orange-red. High-temperature resins synthesized from cashew shell liquid remain rock-solid without thermal breakdown or friction fade. From commercial jetliners and heavy high-speed bullet trains to Formula One race cars, cardinal-based resins are an irreplaceable core binding agent for extreme temperature friction pads. Second, heavy-duty marine anti-corrosive coatings. 100,000-ton container megaships, offshore oil drilling platforms, and naval vessels spend years battling the ferocious corrosion of high-salinity sea spray. Advanced epoxy coatings formulated with cardinal utilize its long hydrophobic hydrocarbon chains to construct an impermeable waterproof barrier over steel hulls, extending marine corrosion resistance far beyond conventional petroleum-based paints. Third, rocket motor ablative thermal shields. The instant a launch vehicle ignites, solid rocket motor nozzles are blasted by thousands of degrees of supersonic exhaust plumes. High-purity cardinal polymerized phenolic resins are layered onto the interior nozzle throat. Under the blistering rocket flame, the material rapidly pyrolyzes into a dense, non-melting carbonized ablative barrier, trapping the infernal heat and shielding the rocket's structural core from burn-through. The very caustic venom that once scarred workers' hands has been reshaped by modern chemistry into humanity's most resilient armor for exploring the ocean deep and soaring into outer space. Now, the next time you pick up a golden plump, fragrant cashew from a jar and savor its buttery crunch, what you are tasting is far more than a delicious snack from nature. You are chewing through millions of years of evolutionary warfare between plants and animals, a rich historical tapestry of maritime exploration, global trade, and generations of human resilience, and a modern industrial epic woven together by thermodynamic detoxification, millisecond CNC precision, AI computer vision, and aerospace polymer chemistry. Nature spent millions of years fortifying this seed behind wooden armor and lethal chemical barriers. Yet human civilization, wielding science as its tool and industry as its crucible, transformed a deadly rainforest toxin into a beloved gourmet staple and launched its discarded armor on a journey to the stars. Behind every seemingly ordinary creation in our daily lives lies a profound industrial miracle of human ingenuity reshaping nature. What hardcore creation would you like us to decode next? Let us know in the comments below. Hit subscribe and join Decoding Everything. We will see you in the next episode.